Welcome to Martian Mixed Martial Arts.
Wow. Wouldn't it be crazy if the aliens manufactured you to be a mixed martial arts fighter? They're like, let's see if we could just turn this.
I'm sure if it would have happened, I would have been much better than this.
Much better than this. You're the fucking champion. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
but if I would be alien manufacturer, I would be Superman, you know?
Hey, first of all, I want to say Alhamdulillah, God gave me everything. Alhamdulillah, I know you got this, you don't like this. Alhamdulillah, tomorrow night I'm gonna smash your boy, guys. I'm gonna smash your boy. And I wanna say thank you, all Irish fans, all fans around the world. Because of you guys, this fight is happening. Thank you guys, and tomorrow night, inshallah, and still.
Call him Mystic Khabib from now on. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious being tuning into the podcast. I welcome you to episode 36 of Martian Mixed Martial Arts. And today we are going to be recapping the crazy weekend that just happened of UFC 229, along with discussing some newly announced title fights that have been announced within the past 24 to 48 hours. A lot of action happening this weekend, and like I said, the Monday and Tuesday, the UFC have been very busy. Even today, Wednesday, announcing a new title fight. So it seems like the ball is rolling at the end of the year. It was a little bit stagnant for a while. We didn't have a lot of headliners for UFC 230, 231, and 232. And even the cards that we did have a few title fights for, they were not, main event worthy. And luckily we had some more title fights get announced, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But first, we got to start talking about the UFC 229 and the brawl that ensued after. Man, what a crazy, crazy scene. Perhaps one of the craziest live moments in UFC history. Very few that topple it. Anderson Silva breaking his leg, and, I guess Brock Lesnar coming into the octagon a little while ago was pretty hectic, but nothing like this, man. The only thing that I can compare to this in MMA history was the Strikeforce brawl that happened back in Nashville in 2011 between Mayhem Miller and the Diaz brothers. That got out of hand, but still, man, I think this tops that. And if you're unaware of what happened after Khabib Nurmagomedov defeated Conor McGregor, he walked over to Conor McGregor's corner and started shouting at his coaches, and particularly one of his coaches, Dylan Dennis. And Dylan, kind of, encouraged him and antagonized him. Maybe made like a come here motion with his hand. And Khabib jumped over the cage in an effort to drop kick Dylan Dennis after a running start off the cage. And a huge brawl ensued after. Dylan Dennis was punched. The commissioners and police officers and UFC employees were trying to hold everybody back. And after Khabib leaped out of the octagon, Conor went to run after, run into all the commotion after he realized the commotion was happening. He was still down where he got submitted in the octagon. Eventually, he realized there was some commotion going on and ran over to jump over the cage himself, which is when I believe Khabib's brother or cousin, who the hell knows? I think his name is Abdurmanikov. Let me get this gentleman's name. Abubakar Nurmagomedov. I'm probably butchering that, but still, looks like he grabbed the foot of Conor McGregor while he was trying to jump over the cage, to which Conor then swung at him. Then he, some officials pulled him off the cage, and then another person started walking up to him, which looked like Zubaria Tukarov, who is a UFC fighter with a UFC fight coming up. And Conor, before he had the chance to walk up toward Conor punched him with a left hand. And then Khabib's brother, Umar Nurmagomedov, went up to Conor afterwards and, you know, started pushing him against the cage. Looked like he almost went for a double leg takedown. And then Zubaria came in again and slapped Conor, allegedly, from what he said in a video. And then after those two gentlemen are separated, a third guy jumps over the cage and starts punching McGregor a few times, bare-fisted, 2 or 3 times. Who the hell knows who this guy is? I really don't even know. I mean, considering he's probably the most, the one at fault the most. It could have been this Abubakar guy, you know, this Abubakar, the guy I mentioned earlier, who was the first one to grab McGregor. I believe it could have been him. I'm not really, you know, positive on all the identities of these Dagestani gentlemen who were involved in the brawl. But then that gentleman was probably the most egregious part of the night. A guy who, you know, wasn't even in the corner, didn't have gloves on, and, you know, jumps over the fence and sucker punches McGregor in the back of the head a few times. Didn't really even get any too clean shots off, surprisingly. The fact that, you know, McGregor was turned around, that was, yeah, probably the worst part of this entire event. So, you know, we can talk about, you know, the what happens after, you know, whose fault is it, you know, it's everybody's at fault, you know, a little bit of everybody. It's not on one, you know, party. It's on Conor. It's on Conor's team. It's on Khabib's team, the UFC. It's all of their faults, you know. Conor was, you know, talking a lot of trash, getting really personal for this fight. Didn't really back it up in the octagon. You know, Conor's team was, you know, antagonizing Khabib after the fight. That was wrong. Khabib shouldn't have left the octagon and tried to dropkick Conor's corner. That was wrong. Khabib's team should not have tried to jump McGregor after the fight. That was wrong. And the UFC is in the wrong for letting behavior like this go unpunished a lot of the time. Letting people, you know, promote fights based on, you know, ethnic tension and religious tension and political tension, you know, with Putin and the whole region that Khabib comes from. You know, they let that go on. They let Conor throw the dolly through the bus and not really get much punishment. They let him, you know, jump the cage of the Bellator and not get any punishment. And for the most part, a lot of fighters have been doing, you know, stuff like this and or have been doing really egregious things and not getting punished. So I mean, when there's no risk of punishment, the people's tempers are going to be out of control, which is exactly what we saw what happened to Khabib. You know, I see a lot of people saying that, oh man, it's Conor's fault. He was the one who was, you know, talking all this shit about his father and his, you know, his country and whatever. Conor didn't what? So you're like the type of people who believe in hate speech? The type of people who think that certain words should be criminalized and you're not able to say certain things. No. This is America. You can say whatever you want. You can say, you know, you can talk shit about someone's dad. You can talk shit about their family, their culture, their team, all of it. It doesn't give you the right to jump out of the cage and try to assault his teammates. It doesn't get, you know, they had their fight. Khabib had his time to repay McGregor for all of the shit that he talked. And he had 18 minutes and 3 seconds to do that in the cage. And he did that. Actually, was it 18 minutes? Yeah, 18 minutes. He did it. He made him pay. He beat him pretty badly. He smashed him in the second round, and then he eventually made him tap in the fourth round. So, I mean, that was your time. That was your revenge. You proved it right there. There was no need for you to get your temper out of control and jump the cage and try to drop kick people and start a brawl in the crowd or around fans. That was very, very irresponsible. You know, it was definitely the wrong thing to do, but I mean, you know, it's not totally unjustified. I mean, obviously, a person who comes from Dagestan, whose, you know, father was their role model and their person who made everything in their career happen, Khabib went right after him, or Conor went right after him, insulting him. He insulted his teammates, his manager, his let's see, I mean, his, you know, people say he insulted his religion. He did not. I don't really insult his religion. You know, Conor offered Khabib a drink of whiskey on his birthday, and people took that as, you know, him insulting his religion. No, I really don't think Conor knew that Muslims don't drink. And even, you know, even I think he was, he was saying, "Come on, it's his birthday." He said it to Dana, "Hey, it's his birthday. It's no big deal." And he said, "Oh, I don't drink." And then after that, I think Conor Medina called him backwards. He said, "What is that? You backwards fool?" So that might have been a little offensive towards Khabib. But yeah, still doesn't give you the right to lose your composure in there after putting on one of the best performances of your career. Millions upon millions of eyes were on the sport that night. It's already reported that in America, the pay-per-view buys around 2.4 to 2.5 million, which would surpass the last UFC record by 800,000 buys. And it was reported that 4 million people were watching in Russia on TV, their most watched MMA event of all time. And you have to know that millions, probably tens of millions of people were watching on illegal streams throughout America and the rest of the world. And a lot of other countries have, pay-per-view fights in some package. The UK, they pay $9.99 a month and they get all UFC pay-per-views. I don't think that they attribute those to their pay-per-views. So I want to say 10 to 20, even as high as 25 million people could have been watching this fight live across the world. And it had a great night. It was a great card, a great main card. There were a ton of great fights that I'll talk about soon after. But unfortunately, a huge stain on the biggest night in MMA history, putting this, having this brawl come out afterwards, having these people sucker punch Conor, having the champion, the guy who just won the title, supposedly this respectful guy, lose his composure and, getting incite a brawl, really. So not a good look for the UFC, for MMA. It's obviously the people loved it. I mean, the casual fan probably thought it was great. They probably thought it was UFC is like WWE, man. The people are going crazy over there. It was certainly less damaging than if the fight shit the bed. If it was a boring 5-round wrestling match and the fight didn't shit the bed. It was a great fight still, but it still damaged. Damaged the image of the sport. People are gonna think that this shit happens all the time. They're gonna think that people are the fighters are super violent and they're super they lose their temper, and they think that the UFC is just still in a barbaric state of which it was maybe in like the 1990s. So not, like I said, not the best look for the sport, but still a very, very successful pay-per-view, a very successful night for the UFC. Obviously they have a couple hula hoops to jump through after this, with this brawl and everything, but still they made a fuckload of money. The biggest gate in MMA history, in Las Vegas history, excuse me. I believe the Bell Center in Toronto and maybe the event UFC 198 in Brazil. And UFC 193 in Australia, I believe, all did higher gates. But as far as Las Vegas, this fight did the highest gates, 17.2 million, 20,000 people in attendance. I think the previous record was around 12 million for UFC 189. So, I mean, the gate, like I said, it just smashed by over 5 million. Like I said, 2.5 million pay-per-view buys at $65 a buy. Let's see. Let's get this number up here. 2.5. That's 162 million. That doesn't even seem like enough. Maybe 162 million dollars in pay-per-view revenue, along with the gate. It's a terrific night for the UFC. With that, asterisk on the end of it. But let's talk about the rest of the card. Just breeze through it real quick. Tony Martin dismantled Ryan LaFleur, beating him in the first 2 rounds of the fight standing, and then eventually getting a nasty head kick knockout in the third. Ryan LaFleur looking terrible. I believe he's actually retired since then. Really damn shame. Wish you would have told me before I bet on him, that motherfucker. Still impressive performance from Tony Martin. Nick Lentz defeated Gray Maynard by TKO in the second round. Just an all-out beating from Nick Lentz here. Nick Lentz, I think he landed like 88 significant strikes in the first round. Man, Gray Maynard's chin is, his chin sucks. He gets rocked by a punch really easily, but After that, the dude's chin is granite. He can get rocked and be out of it, but you will never put the dude out cold. Like, he will just eat as many punches as you throw him, and he'll still stay standing. I mean, he's barely defending himself and eating tons and tons of damage, not having any offense to come back, but he's still surviving those punches. So, man, what a fucking warrior Gray Maynard is, but eventually gets TKO'd in the second round. Just brutal fight for him. It took probably 100 shots to the head, and it's really time for Gray Maynard to retire. Doesn't really put much stock in Nick Lentz either. I mean, he's basically beating a corpse at this point. But Yana Kunitskaya defeating Lena Landsberg. High-level MMA here, pushing against the cage. Maybe a takedown here and there. Just terrible, boring fight. Next fight, Scott Holtzman pulling off a big upset. Maybe the biggest on the card. Against Alan Patrick. Yes, it was the biggest underdog on the card. Plus 260, man. Alan Patrick just not showing up in this one, not wrestling. Scott Holtzman showing the fuck up for this one. Really, his striking looked good, his wrestling defense was good, and eventually landed a terrific knockout by elbowing Alan Patrick's face into the mat from the mount. Just a brutal finish. Next fight, Aspen Ladd ran through Tony Evinger like knife through hot butter. The younger, more athletic, 23-year-old, more muscular fighter was taking on a 37-year-old old fighter coming off of a knee surgery. Aspen Ladd just smashed Evinger, got on top, and just pounded her out. Really impressive from Aspen Ladd. Next fight, Vicente Luque ran through Jalen Turner. It was a close fight. Vicente Luque was like a minus 800 favorite. Jalen Turner brought in on short notice from another promotion, and it's a damn shame they gave him this fight because Turner is pretty impressive. He's got some skills for a young guy, but they bring him in against the top 15 welterweight to just get slaughtered in his first fight. It's a terrible way to bring in a prospect to your company, but Vicente Luque looking pretty good and eventually getting a pretty brutal finish in this one. 7 knockouts in this one. Some of the most knockouts of all time in a UFC event, if I recall correctly. Next fight, Jussier Formiga defeated Sergio Pettis in a decision. Pretty boring fight, man. Sergio Pettis shit the bed on this one, man. He just couldn't get anything going. Jussier Formiga's grappling was on point. Didn't really hunt for subs too much, but looked pretty confident to just get position and stall out and win a round. But Formiga's kind of made a career over that. So, but man, I'm just surprised at how mediocre Sergio Pettis looked in this one. He was one win away from a title shot, and he just comes out against Formiga and looks flat. So, really disappointing performance from him. Moving on to the main card. First fight, not too exciting. Michelle Waterson defeated Felice Herrig. The scores were a little bit wide for this one. I really thought that this was a close fight. I thought Felice won the first and was even close in the third round too. But a couple of the judges gave all 3 to Waterson and one even a 10-8 to Waterson, which is just totally unjustified. So Michelle is looking pretty good in this one, and but both of these women's ceiling is pretty set right now. I think it's around the 6 through 10 mark of the women's strawweight division. I don't think they'll be able to beat Andrade or Kowalkiewicz or Joanna Rose, and then of course Tatiana Suarez, the new dog in town. I don't think any of those girls will be able to beat any of those girls. So unfortunately, I think there's a little bit stuck in limbo here. Next fight, crazy fight. Derek Lewis defeated Alexander Volkov by knockout 4 minutes and 49 seconds into the third round. So that's 14 minutes and 49 seconds out of 15 minutes in this fight. Derek Lewis was getting his ass beat for the first 14 minutes and 30 seconds of this fight. Ass beat, man. Almost stopped multiple times. Looked like he broke his orbital bone. He was like holding his eye in pain because his eye was smashed. And Alexander Volkov could not capitalize. He literally thought he eye-poked Derek Lewis and called timeout for Lewis, even though he really just landed like a jab, and it probably crushed his orbital bone, and Lewis was holding his eye in pain. And Volkov's like, hey, man, you all right? You need to take a break? There were multiple times when Lewis was hurt bad in this fight, and Volkov just didn't follow up and didn't chase the finish, man. And then in the last, he's winning the third round. He won the first 2 rounds decisively. I thought he almost finished him in the first and the third. Was probably on his way to maybe 30-25 decision. And then in the last 30 seconds of the fight, he just freezes up, starts defending totally different than he has the entire fight, and gets caught with a huge overhand right. Drops him to the canvas, and Derek Lewis pounds him out for the finish. It was truly one of the most shocking comebacks I've ever seen. I don't want to really talk about this fight anymore because I lost money on Alex Volkov. It was I bet Volkov round 3. He was close to finishing in round 3. I could have hedged multiple times on the live betting when I knew the fight was close. I knew that Lewis was still in there. He still had power, and it seemed like Volkov was... I don't know, man. I had an intuition about this one. It was plus 300. I was like, nah, I'll wait. Plus 400, nah, no, it's not. Plus 600, plus 700, it got up to plus 854. It would have only taken a few dollars to hedge my entire bet, and I would have been in the green no matter what. But I just chose not to. In probably one of the stupidest decisions of my betting career. The read was good. I did tape on this fight. I knew Volkov was a terrible matchup for him. It was a good bet. You know, you can't really say it was a bad bet when it was winning for 14 minutes and 30 seconds and ended up losing on some fluke shit. It just disappointing. Volkov wasn't a bad bet. It was a bad bet not hedging on Lewis when I had the chance to. So, you know, obviously incredible comeback from Derek Lewis. This dude has just fucking like entities guiding him to success in the UFC. I don't know. It's some external being that rescues Derek Lewis. How many round 3 finishes does Derek Lewis have? Let's see. He round 3, Victor Pesta, TKO. Let's see, Shamil Abdurmanikov, round 4, TKO. Travis Brown, round 2, TKO. Tabura, round 3, TKO. So he's only got four third round finishes, but you know, late finishes are this guy's specialty. He's losing the fight, he looks out of it, and somehow he pulls that shit out of his ass. It's incredible. And more on Derek Lewis coming up in a little bit. I won't spoil it yet, but next fight, Dominic Reyes defeating Ovince St. Preux. Pretty boring fight. Reyes hurt Ovince St. Preux really bad in the first round. And after that, OSP wasn't the same, couldn't amount any offense. And after that, Reyes wasn't the same. He used a lot of energy trying to finish OSP, but couldn't get the job done. So the latter 2 rounds of this fight were pretty low output, pretty boring. But nonetheless, Dominic Reyes getting the W, looking pretty good doing so, beating his highest level opponent yet in OSP. And in the co-main event, we had a dogfight. One thing I guarantee about this fight was there was going to be blood, and I was spot on. There was a lot of blood in this fight. Didn't know who was going to win. Thought Tony had the edge, but man, again, perfect read on this fight. I thought Tony was going to win, but I also thought that the line was a little off on Pettis. I thought the line was his TKO line especially, and we saw Pettis rock Tony Ferguson in this fight. You know, I knew it was a possibility, and I knew that the fact that it was 11-1 odds was ridiculous. So it was a perfect stab if you didn't really want to go on Pettis' money line, which I didn't. And like I said, good read on the fight, and there was ups and downs. Tony looked good, or Tony got his legs kicked coming out in the first minute of the fight, coming off that knee surgery. It was really, really worrying me. And the commentators were pointing out too. They thought Tony might have been limping, but he stayed tall, stayed strong, kept up that pressure like he's known for, and ended up really punishing Anthony Pettis in this one. Tony Ferguson won the first round. Was using his elbows, was using his walk forward style, really crisp boxing, and just typical vintage Tony Ferguson. And then eventually in the start of the second round, Pettis is able to rock Ferguson, but again, Ferguson remained calm and composed and was able to roll out of any trouble. Literally was rolling out of trouble in this one after he got rocked, and was able to regain his composure, clear his head, and just keep up that output throughout the second round. And he was beating Pettis bad. And at the end of the second round, Duke Rufus, Anthony Pettis' coach, said, "Anthony, you're all right, man?" And then Pettis said, my right hand's broken. And he's like, "All right, man, I'm not sending you out there with a broken hand. It's over." And he called the fight there. So really good decision by Duke Rufus on that one. I think that Tony would have finished in the third, and he probably would have done a lot of damage to Pettis. So really, really smart move for him to pull his fighter there. And Tony Ferguson, man, knee surgery 5 months ago, and he rehabs it by himself, comes back, has a full healthy training camp, and takes out a former champion in Anthony Pettis to make his UFC record 14-1 on a 11 fight win streak, maybe even 12 fight win streak. The dude is just incredible, man. Just truly, truly incredible fighter that we all have the privilege of witnessing, Tony Ferguson. And we went over the main event already. We'll talk about a little of the fight, though. The fight we didn't talk about. We talked about the aftermath, but the fight was a little bit. It was a good fight. A lot of people thought Conor was going to knock him out of the first, or Khabib was going to maul him by the second or something, but it didn't turn out like that at all. It was pretty competitive for the first round of the fight. Khabib shot in pretty early. Conor wasn't able to get off any effective striking in the first 30 seconds to a minute. It looked like Conor was defending the takedown well, but eventually Khabib did get him down. Once he got him down, though, this round Khabib was not able to inflict the usual amount of damage that he is used to. He's usually just a world beater on the ground. Will just, fuck your life up once he gets you there. But Conor did a good job, tying up his arms and minimizing the punishment that he took in this round. That was the game plan, according to John Kavanagh. His coach said that, we thought we were going to get down in the first, but our objective was to just take as little damage as possible. Round 2, he said, again, same thing. We thought we were going to get taken down. And he said, Kavanagh said the plan was to play guard. That's fucking retarded, man. You don't play guard against Khabib Nurmagomedov. He will smash your fucking face in. Like, when I heard him say that, I was like, dude, you gotta be kidding me. Your plan was to play guard against Khabib? You should have been trying to get back up to your feet I know that he's great at keeping you on your feet, but playing guard is not acceptable either. What happened to Conor in round 2 is not acceptable. Conor got smashed in round 2. Khabib was able to get side control, was able to just stack Conor against the fence and just rain down ground and pound on Conor. You probably landed, I want to say, 8 to 10 hard punches on the ground. The round was over. It was a 10-8 round. Conor gave him a big smile after he gave up, and it seemed like he was happy about something. He was happy that he survived the onslaught, which he did. He probably got Khabib to use a lot of energy, and now round 3 he's going to be able to implement his game plan, which he did. Round 3, Conor was able to keep the fight standing. He was able to stuff takedowns. He was able to land some knees and elbows in the clinch and disengage Khabib when Khabib tried to wrap his hands around him. And Conor had a good round. He won the round. He won the first round from Khabib Nurmagomedov in Khabib's career. So, successful, but he did not capitalize as much as he needed to. He needed to hurt Khabib in the third round. It was his only chance to really get off a lot of consecutive striking, a lot of multiple minutes on the feet. And like I said, although he won the round, he was not able to do as much damage as he needed to. That was his opportunity. Khabib was a little bit tired from the beating that he put on him in round 2, but by round 4 it seemed like Khabib has got his energy back, and it seemed like Conor had lost a bit of a step at this point. It seemed like his cardio was in worse condition than Khabib. Khabib came out the 4th round and was able to get Conor down fairly easily. Conor gave up an underhook to Khabib. Khabib took his back, and Khabib cinched in a rear naked choke. It was a little bit over the chin, so kind of like a neck crank, jaw crusher, rear naked choke modification. Regardless, it gets the tap from Conor McGregor 1 minute and 57 seconds into the 3 minutes and 3 seconds, excuse me, into the fourth round of this fight. Retaining his championship. And the reason I put that clip in the beginning of the show was, man, Khabib really did predict it. He predicted he's going to smash him. You know, he predicted he would retain his belt. And, you know, he was pretty classy in that clip. He, you know, thanked the Irish fans, thanked all the fans for making the fight happen, and assured everyone that he was going to smash your boy, as in, you know, the fans' boy, the UFC boy, everyone. So, and he did that indeed. So, you know, being a Conor McGregor fan, it was a bit of a rough night, man. Pretty upsetting. I knew this was a very, very real possibility, and it came true. So, you know, from what's next for Conor, man, he's got options. Of course he's got options. He's still the biggest star in the game. Still probably the most successful superstar in MMA history. So he has the Nate Diaz rematch. He has the Aldo rematch. You know, possibly Max Holloway rematch. All three of those fights are on the horizon. Even George St. Pierre has an interest in fighting him. So does Anderson Silva. You know, he has legends at all weight classes wanting to fight him. He has, you know, active guys wanting to fight him. So he has a lot of possibilities. But I imagine he will take a few months off before his next contest. As for what's next for Khabib, I see a little bit of a suspension. You know, he lost his cool and, you know, jumped into the crowd with, you know, intent to kind of hurt someone. So I see him getting maybe 3-6 months suspension, somewhere around there. You know, getting a pretty hefty fine, maybe $200,000-$300,000, maybe even $500,000. So it'll probably be 20% of his purse, which will be $200,000, or 30%, which will be that'll be 20% of his purse was $2,400,000. Holy shit! All right, it might not be 20%. Maybe it'll be 10%. 10% will be $200,000. That's still a lot. So, but man, 10% seems low. You know, usually when they find a fighter, it's either 20 or 30%. So, shit, man, could be better not. Hope it's not 400 or 600,000. But he did get a $2 million paycheck, the biggest of his career by far. So, but I believe that I don't even know if he's been paid that. I believe it's being currently withheld by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, pending his, you know, his pending his. I don't even know what it is. I guess it is a trial. So we will see in the near future what Khabib's punishments are. I don't believe Conor will have any punishments. It seems like Zubaria Tutarov, UFC fighter, will be cut. Damn shame, man. This guy's got like over 1 million followers on Instagram, and he fucking threw away his UFC career to get in a slap on Conor McGregor after the fight. What a fucking moron. You know, there's a lot of fucking greaseballs who attacked, you know, Zubaria, the guy who punched McGregor from behind. Dude, even Khabib's translator ran over to Conor's corner and punched Dylan Dennis in the back of the head. Like, the fucking translator? Like, dude, are you crazy? Like, you know, fucking know your place. Like, I really can't believe that, man. And going forward, Khabib's going to have, you know, a lot less of his team in his corner. Because, man, I can see a lot of these guys getting, you know, banned from the UFC, even getting their visas revoked, possibly, for, you know, assaulting someone. So Conor McGregor did not press any charges, though. You know, he knew that the shit was, you know, their teams were at war, and he knew that, you know, the tensions were high, and so he decided to not to place any charges. So pretty smart move from him there. So getting into the rest of the news from this week, UFC 230, the next pay-per-view, finally has a main event. We've been speculating about it for weeks. I thought they would have announced it weeks ago. You know, and the main event for this fight is a heavyweight title fight between champion Daniel Cormier versus Derek Lewis. Yes, Derek Lewis, the same gentleman who I told you got his ass beat for 14 minutes and 30 seconds of his fight 3 days ago. So that means on October 6th, Derek Lewis fought Alex Volkov, took 70, 80 shots to the head, was almost finished multiple times, looked like he broke his orbital bone multiple times, looked terrible in the fight, didn't have anything going until the last 30 seconds. And in his post-fight interview, he said that, fuck that noise, I ain't fighting for the title yet, I need to work on my cardio. Joe Rogan said, you think about fighting for the title? And he said, fuck what you talking about, my cardio is trash, I need to work on that. So incredible. The fact that the guy literally said that he's not ready for a title shot, and then 4 days later they announced that he's fighting for the title. Psh, beats me. The last guy who said he wasn't ready to fight for the title was Darren Till. After he missed weight for his fight, he won anyway, but he said, yeah, I don't think I'm ready for the title yet because I missed weight. Well, guess what? The UFC is like, we need a main event. You're our guy. You're fighting Woodley. And Darren Till was a victim of one of the most one-sided beatings in UFC history. In UFC title fight history, let's say. They rushed their contender. They put him in there, and he got mauled. Derek Lewis, they're obviously capitalizing on the fact that he had great comeback at the most watched UFC of all time, and he also had a very funny post-fight speech after the whole "my balls were hot" thing. USA in this hoe. He's got a lot of mainstream attention from people in the past couple days. His Instagram followers have jumped from 500,000 to 1.1 million. So obviously the UFC is seeing the popularity he's getting, and they need a main event. So they're totally waiving the fact that he just ate 70 to 80 shots. They're waiving the fact that he was medically suspended until after this event, November 6th. But what happens is the medical suspension. Okay, Derek Lewis, you got 5 weeks. You can fight again on November 6th. Then, a day later, they say, oh wait, here's a revised list. Derek Lewis is eligible to fight October 29th. Wow. How miraculous that you change one guy's suspension and he just gets thrown into a title fight, man. It's just not even, sure, it'll be a good fight. Sure, I mean, it'll be a fun fight. It'll be entertaining. There's obviously some marketing aspects to the fight, but you're just throwing out safety, throwing it out the window. Look what you did to Michael Bisping. He had a tough fight, 3-round fight against George St. Pierre. You needed a main event that fell through. A couple weeks later, you take your former champion Bisping, you fly him to China, you put him in a fight 3 weeks later, and he gets knocked out cold. You can't have guys fighting 2 times in 1 month, especially when on the first of the month, the dude ate 80 punches to the head, and it was almost finished multiple times. It makes no fucking sense. It's so desperate from the UFC. The UFC announced Valentina Shevchenko versus Sijara Eubanks for UFC 230. The fans were outraged. They said, how could you make that main event? How could you not make Dustin Poirier versus Nate Diaz the main event instead? How could you take away Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Valentina Shevchenko? How could you do all of this? They said, oh yeah, you're right, that was a stupid move. Scratch that. Eubanks, you're done. You're not fighting for the title anymore. Valentina versus Joanna, that fight's back on. And instead we have a new main event. It's just like they're every card is a puzzle, right? Okay, you need 13 pieces to every puzzle. And it seems like the UFC is taking, one piece from a different puzzle and putting it here, and they're, sticking one puzzle piece here and putting it there. It makes no sense. They're dismantling certain cards to make others better. And, they're also risking fighter safety in the process. They're also disrespecting the fuck out of certain fighters, like Sijara Eubanks, saying, hey, you have a title shot, and then just taking it away from her out of nowhere. This girl got heat from fans. They're like, "Oh, you fucking bitch! How could you be in the main event? You're 3-2 in MMA. You have one UFC fight. You miss weight. You fucking bitch." You know, like this girl got tormented for a week. She's probably thinking, "Man, my life's pretty shit right now. All the fans hate me. But hey, at least I'm gonna get to fight for that title, right?" No. The title fight doesn't even happen anymore. And I bet you the fans are still gonna hate this girl, even though she didn't even get the title fight after all. You know, her responses were definitely a bit questionable. She said, the reason why you guys don't, like me in the main event is because you're afraid to see another black person as UFC champion. That's not the case. That's not the fucking case at all. Like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. It's because you're 3-2 in MMA and you're trying to headline Madison Square Garden at a weight class that you couldn't make last fight. Your last fight got canceled because you couldn't make the weight, and your fight got, they luckily scrapped together a main event at the last second. And, this girl is delusional. She was very, very, emotional in her responses to the fans. But I mean, who wouldn't be when you have, this girl wasn't even verified on Twitter, had like a couple thousand followers, and all of a sudden she's headlining one of the biggest UFC cards of the year in Madison Square Garden. Okay, obviously it made no sense, but still, the girl took a lot of punishment unjustly for it, and that can't be undone. So, I'm very, very happy, though, that Joanna versus Shevchenko is back on. Obviously, that's the better fight. But man, this Derek Lewis fight, it seems very desperate. And, it seems, like a huge mismatch. The odds are already out for it. Daniel Cormier is a -800 or 900 favorite. Predictably, I really don't see how Derek Lewis wins this fight. Maybe a haymaker punch that lands on Cormier, but Cormier is a terrific boxer. He's a terrific wrestler. Derek Lewis, it's got some power, got some pretty bad cardio, doesn't have much grappling skill, but Daniel Cormier also was, they had rumors of him fighting on this card versus, Jones or Gustafsson or something, and Daniel Cormier said he couldn't fight because he had a hand injury. But all of a sudden, they, offer him a certain amount of money and a certain contender in Derek Lewis who he thinks he could beat, and he's like, "Oh, never mind, fuck my hand, I'll fight anyway." Fuck my Brock Lesnar fight that I'm supposed to have in a couple months, that I need my heavyweight title for. I'll fight Derek Lewis because he knows it's such a little risk. It's bad. We don't need main events this bad where you have to forge together this main event. We have Dustin Poirier versus Nate Diaz could have been main event, but they decided to do this instead. But it might have been a good move considering breaking news the past 24 hours. Dustin Poirier has pulled out of UFC 230 with an undisclosed injury. Undisclosed injury, you might say? Kind of like what they would say if he was popped for a USADA violation. Yes, we don't know if it's USADA. We don't know if it's an injury yet. That's the new wondering aspect of this new USADA policy. So we will figure out in the coming days or weeks whether it is an injury, whether it is a USADA violation. So a huge bummer though, man. That card took a huge hit. I mean, that was the best fight on the card, I believe, and unfortunately, it has been erased. But good news, the other title fight that is announced, the long-awaited return of the greatest fighter of all time, John Bones Jones, will be returning at the end of the year at UFC 232 in Las Vegas, Nevada, taking on an opponent he's fought before in a rematch 5 years in the making, Alexander Gustafsson. John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson will presumably be fighting for the vacant UFC light heavyweight title. I assume they will strip Daniel Cormier of it in the meantime, and they will put that belt up for grabs versus John Jones versus Gustafsson. Man, incredible fight. We've been calling for this rematch for years. It was supposed to happen at UFC 178. And it fell through. I believe Gustafsson got hurt, and that's when Daniel Cormier filled in, and then somebody else got hurt, and then they ended up fighting at UFC 182 instead. But yeah, we've been waiting to see this rematch for a while. It's been rumored for a while that maybe they would have it at UFC 230, and eventually it gets done for UFC 232. So very, very excited to see that one. There will be 2 title fights in that card. Also, the women's super fight between Chris Cyborg and Amanda Nunes. So the UFC really came together at the end of the year. They had this schedule that was, they were missing pieces to all these cards, missing the major piece, the main event, the ticket seller of every event. And, eventually they cemented them in. They cemented in Holloway versus Ortega for Toronto 231, Lewis versus Cormier 230, and Jones versus Gustafsson at UFC 232. So a lot of news happened in the past couple weeks, in the past couple of days even, with these title fights, and obviously that crazy brawl that happened this past weekend. So felt the need to make a special edition of Martian MMA to talk about it. There will be no UFC preview this week. There's no UFC cards until October 27th. So after this episode, you guys won't hear from me until around a few days before then. There's Bellator this weekend. Fedor Emelianenko is taking on Chael Sonnen. Ryan Bader is taking on Matt Mitrione. Benson Henderson is fighting. Lorenz Larkin is fighting. There's Sergey Karatonov versus Roy Nelson. There's a lot of great Bellator fights going on this weekend, and 2 cards actually. So that'll keep people entertained. Also PFL going down. So a lot of other MMA to watch. Just because there's not any UFC this week doesn't mean there's not MMA to watch. So I will leave it at that. I'm not going to dive too far into the Bellator cards. I'm going to pick both the heavy favorites in Fedor and Bader to win and to end up fighting one another in the heavyweight Grand Prix finale. So that's going to be all for this quick edition of Martian MMA. This has been episode 36 of the program. And ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious being tuning into the podcast, I thank you for tuning into this episode, and I will see you guys before UFC MontCon. Peace.